now begin session 5. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce our distinguished resource person, Dr. Nityananda, faculty at IIM Tiruchirappalli. Dr. Nityananda is an esteemed assistant professor at the Indian Institute of Management Tiruchirappalli, where he specializes in French and legal systems. He teaches a range of courses including business laws, legal aspects of business, legal aspect of marketing, strategic management of intellectual property rights, legal aspects of entrepreneurship and innovation, and capital market regulation. As the chairperson of Trademarks Committee at IIM Trichy, he also oversees the registration and management of the Institute's trademarks. Dr. Nityananda's expertise extends beyond IIM Trichy. For the past 7 years, he has been a visiting faculty at IAE AIX Massey Graduate School of Management, teaching strategic management of intellectual property rights. He also taught in the master program in international business at the École Supérieure des Sciences Commerciales d'Angers in France. His academic journey includes a rich consulting background where he worked in urban infrastructure finance for 5 years. During this time, Dr. Nityananda provided consulting services to prestigious organizations such as the World Bank, Asian Development Bank, and various city corporations across India. He has also advised pharmaceutical, media, electronics, and telecommunication companies on intellectual property management, covering areas like IPR valuation, strategy, collateralization, and contract management. Dr. Nityananda holds a PhD from the National Law School of India University, Bangalore, in the area of intellectual property and finance. His research interests are focused on the intersection of business law, capital market laws, and the strategic management of intellectual property, particularly the protection and leveraging of financial innovations. With over 12 years of academic experience, 2 years of industry experience, and 5 years of consulting, Dr. Nityananda brings a unique perspective to his teaching and research. His consulting work extends to startups, where he advises on organization structure, IPR protection, contract management, and more. Dr. Nityananda's contribution to the fields of business, law, and finance are highly valued, and we are grateful for the knowledge and expertise he continues to share with students and professionals alike. Dr. Nityananda, we are honored to have you with us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Saraswati, and like to thank Dr. Saraswati and Dr. Ratinamalli for inviting me and making me be a part of this wonderful FDP. I hope the faculty members from different parts of the country see value in what we're doing and what we're trying to discuss adds value to their perspectives, their insights, and also maybe in some way helping them broaden their career prospects. So with that, just one additional thing I forgot. Not in a good state of health. Have a very bad eye infection. I in fact cancelled my session, but Professor Ratinamalli said, "No, please don't do that. We want the participant would want to hear you." So based on that, I'm thankful that she persuaded me to be a part of this. I really enjoyed the preparation, and also I hope I'll also be able to enjoy the delivery of this session. So today I'm going to be talking about something many of you would have already discussed, deliberated, and maybe even implemented in a couple of organizations, many of your organizations. So that topic that I'm going to be talking about is called business continuity plan. Okay, plan or planning or business continuity management. There are a lot of things that people talk about. I wanted to talk about it. Talk about this particular topic, that is BCP, business continuity plan or planning, from the perspective of disaster management, because we've seen one major disaster. I think all of us have seen this major disaster, which came in the form of COVID-19. Now, that is one example of a disaster, but there could be many, many disasters that one organization could encounter. And what I'm talking about, you might feel that no, it's only in terms of businesses, but not in terms of academic institutions. Don't worry, because I'll try to make the connect how what we discuss in business continuity plan could also be implemented in academic institutions. And I'm also pretty sure, because when we said, or when we already went through this process of business continuity plan for the COVID, we all know how we manage that disaster. Okay, how we manage that lockdown, how we manage that online education, how we managed to teach, how we managed to stay alive, how we managed to get ourselves basic necessities, and how we survived. So we're already there. So just trying to connect the literature in terms of business continuity plan and the academic institutions is something that we'll try to achieve towards the end of this session. So I would like to make a quick presentation, maybe about um, okay, yeah, let me go back. So this is where I'm planning to be. Huh. So I don't know if I'll be able to make a slideshow. Let's see. Okay, hello, side screen, entire screen. Okay. Okay. Is my presentation visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is the presentation changing?
Yes, sir.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
So, so this is what I intend to do: business continuity planning. And as I told you, this is what I intend to do. So, disaster and its classifications. Why do we need to look at disasters? What are the things that these disasters can cause? Then, how are these disasters classified? Then, in terms of impact of disaster, okay, impact of disasters on the need for business continuity plan. I think I'm getting an echo. I think somebody needs to mute their audio. I'm not. I don't know. Okay. Then we have developing a business BCP. How do you develop a business continuity plan? What is this creature called as BCP audit? Why do we need to do that? And then some closing remarks. So this is what I intend to do. Roughly have about 46 slides. Hopefully, I should be able to complete it in about 45 minutes. I intend to closing it before that, but let's hope that this is done. Okay. So the first section is disasters and its classification. We're all familiar with disasters. Fortunately, we don't have to be, but we know what kind of disasters we could face in an organization or as part of our organizational exercise. Some of them could be natural, like environmental disasters. Some of them could be explosion. We have this very famous or very notorious explosion in terms of what happened at the Bhopal gas tragedy. I think the next to biological agents and explosion could be one of the examples. Then hostage situation. We have many hostage situations. It could be like the aircraft being held as hostage. Okay, that's your that's your class taking away the aircraft. Then we have threat of action, criminal damages, accidental damages. Then fault or failure, so something that could fail naturally. Okay, it could be a natural process. For example, the computers fail, the hard disks fail. The classic example is hard disks fail, pen drives fail. Then there could be some incidents like fire, flood, or localized malicious damage. Some of the employees or some of the, I think the classic example of localized malicious damage is your instance of damage that took place in Manesar, Maruti factory at Manesar. Some of the employees killed the managers, killed one manager, injured a lot of people there, and they also set the fire to the factory. So that's a localized malicious damage. So then we have theft. Your employees could steal, your contractors could steal. Then terrorism and sabotage. Terrorism, Mumbai terror attack was a good example. Then sabotage, some of the employees or some of the outsiders, they could kill or they could damage the facilities. Then explosion, chemical spill. I think these two examples we just saw, Bhopal gas tragedy. I think the next three, explosion, chemical spill, and gas leak are good examples. Diseases, no need to tell. Diseases, I think COVID-19 is a good example for everyone. Earthquake, we have seen it in Latur, Gujarat, where there was a major earthquake and businesses were disrupted for a very long time. Then recently we saw this in Chennai, cyclone or a severe storm, and how it could cause damage to the businesses, to the aircrafts, to the transportation, to citizens, to banks, to financial institutions. Everybody were affected. So these are some of the disasters. Now these disasters we can classify them into various types. Acts of nature like hurricane or floods. Then external man-made events, terrorism, evacuation, security intrusion, and so on. Internal, unintentional. It could be accidental loss of file or computer failure. This is accidental, unintentional. Internal, unintentional. Internal, intentional could be strike, sabotage, data deletion, financial wrongdoing, and so on. Then there could be some things which could be extraneous, but it could have regulatory, legal, and compliance related issues. Then we have, and this could be either intentional or unintentional. And then there is a business failure caused by inappropriate or unsuccessful business strategies or management. So this last one could be self-inflicted, could be man-made, but they're definitely there. So these are a few things that is the first classification that based on a type of event. In terms of effect, the failure of an individual infrastructure elements, like for example, one point fails, that is your server fails, and then because of that server, the entire operations gets staggered. Classic example, recently the banks, there was a problem. I think the server, they were affected, and because of that server, the entire banking operations of couple of banks, they were affected very badly. Then longer term interruption of critical flow, information flow. That's one. Then longer term interruption of critical business activity chain or business process. For example, one of the vendor who's supposed to be supplying a certain product, he kind of fails. The business fails, or maybe the vendor refuses to supply. So that's one. Then local longer term business interruption, which could be, for example, what happened in Chennai is a local longer term business interruption because of the flood. Then complete business interruption. For example, what happened in Latur, or what happened in okay, this is complete business interruption. September 11th in 2001. That's a good example of a complete business interruption. So there was a terror attack in the US, because of which everything that was being communicated was stopped. And that affected business operations of a lot of organizations across a lot of business streams. So those are disasters, business disasters, and these, based on the interruption, they could be classified on multiple things. So the reason part, if you look at these disasters from the perspective of reason, you can put them into three buckets. One is the natural, flood, hurricane, earthquake, tornado, fire, and so on. What's happening in Los Angeles is a good example of a fire-related natural disaster that's taking place. Then we have environmental, aircraft crash, explosion, contamination, communications getting affected, and power. So that's environmental. Then inside that, somebody is inciting these disasters. Arson, sabotage, vandalism, workplace disaster, and violence. Okay, so these are a few examples of few classifications of disasters. So which could affect a business organization, that could affect even an academic institutions, and how we're going to look at it. What is the need for business continuity plan? We'll look at it in the next section. Okay. So why should we look at this disasters, and how does one prepare themselves? How do we manage ourselves in terms of this disasters? So typically what happens is there will be this level of performance, that is usual level of performance. There's a minimum level and there's an activity which is the maximum uh, optimal level that an organization is performing. So when that process is happening, suddenly there's an incident. It could be COVID. There's a I think this legislative, no, the good example of a legislative or a regulatory is your demonetization. I think I forgot to mention that. Okay, so there's an incident. Now, when that incident takes place, the operations of the organization suddenly gets disrupted to a very bad extent. Okay, so it could be a lockdown, it could be a flood, it could be earthquake, it could be a fire, it could be any of these things, any of these incidents that we just saw. Okay, so when that incident occurs, the operations suddenly crashes. Okay, as in you're not able to take care of any of your activities. Now, typically, the response time, that is where you're going to resume your resume time of operations. So that needs some basic time for you to settle down, understand what is the cause and how you can how you can manage this, how you can implement this. So that requires certain basic time, and from there you start operating at a minimum level. Okay, now all my basic services are being offered, all my basic people are safe, I've ensured that everybody is active and everybody is running at a basic minimum level. So that's the first response time, and from there you start step by step to resume it to the normal level of activities. It might take maybe 1 week, it might take a couple of months, like what happened in case of COVID. To resume it to the normal level, people are still struggling. It might take a couple of years also, but at the end of say 6 months or 1 year, you're back to your normal. You can become back to the normal level. So that's your maximum tolerable period. So disaster recovery is about this. So how soon can you resume from a zero level or from an incident level operations to the optimal level of operations? So that is the issue. If you don't do this, okay. Now, when you have an incident, you can get into three kinds of responses. One is emergency response, incident management, and then business recovery. So these are the three phases of recovery that you need to know. And that's from there, I think once you do all these three, then you're back to business as usual. Now, disasters could have significant impact on loss of market share, lower share price, lower credit rating, lower brand value, loss of company image, public confidence, and credibility, loss of key staff who may move to competitors. So these are the impact of disasters. And if you don't manage the disasters properly, one, how? In terms of there should be an emergency response. The other one is there should be an incident management, and then you should also ensure that your business is back to normal. So this is something that BCP provides, that is business continuity plan and disaster management plan provides. If you don't do this, you're going to have these kind of impacts. Okay, loss of market share, loss of share price, credit rating, and so on. Now, when you talk about BCP, that is business continuity plan, there are 3 or 4 approaches that people keep talking about. The first one is business continuity plan. So business continuity plan, there are 3 parts to it. One is before the incident takes place, you need to plan certain things. Okay, that's your prevention plans. And while the incident is happening or it has just occurred, you need to look at emergency response plans, that is during. And then you have business resumption plan, that is where we're talking about your incident management and business recovery. So that is after the incident has occurred. So when you look at prevention plans, you have risk management, facilities planning, and then security plan. So this is your before the incident takes place, you have to plan all of this. And then you look at emergency response plan, you're looking at incident response, life safety versus asset protection, then damage assessment. So this is what you do while the incident is happening. And then business resumption plan, when you're trying to recover, you look at crisis management plan, business units plan, and then information technology department plan. So this is your BCP. Now let's look at business resumption plans. Business resumption is also here, but let's look at it from a detailed plan. So when you look at business resumption plan, you have crisis management plan. So how do you manage a crisis? Then you divide them into crisis management teams, or each team you put them, you have a crisis management team representative, and then they will take care of this crisis management activities whenever there's an incident that's taking place. And then there's also this business unit's plan of action. So we are talking about the last activity that's here, and that's after. And then you have business units teams response representatives, and then you have the IS teams responses. Now, when you look at business resumption plan as crisis management plan, which is here, so generally you have two differences. One is incident causes physical damage to company's assets. So the business resumption plan looks at how do we look at least impact on the company processes, least impact on company assets, least impact on company people. So that's a resumption plan. Okay.
Participants, please mute.
Is there a question, please? Okay. Sorry. I was hoping that I was assuming that there was a question that the participant wanted to ask. Okay. So then we look at the crisis management plan. So where you look at how does the crisis team, crisis management team plan? How do they take care of the incident, and especially when there's no physical damage to company assets, and they will also look at specific kinds of crises. Now, when you look at a company-wide BCP, that is business continuity program, it typically involves various components. So it's a comprehensive plan, and it includes various components. What are those components? There's a disaster avoidance program, so which you look at how do you avoid certain disasters. Okay, starting your office in a place that doesn't have rains or that doesn't cause floods, that's a disaster avoidance plan. Then you have loss mitigation plan. So now that this has happened, so what do you do to reduce the losses? Insurance is a good example. Okay, insurance policies is a good example. Then business resumption program that has incident response plan, work group recovery plans, and IS disaster recovery plans. While you're looking at company-wide BCP, there is also one level of corporate planning that takes place to build a BCP at a corporate level itself. Okay, this is a company level. This is at this could be division level. This could be branch level. This could be a regional level. But at a corporate level, there could have planning for managing BCP, business continuity program. Okay, if you have worked for big organizations like Intel or Microsoft or Google or Amazon, you will know that these organizations, they have a very large program at a corporate level which deals with these things. Corporate objective, and how is these plans made? First, there's a corporate objective. Their objective is fundamentally to say, I want to minimize my losses. Okay, I want to ensure that losses, not only in terms of people, assets, resources, and your key stakeholders. It could be employees, shareholders, all of them. They have minimum impact of this incident, and the losses are bare minimum in terms of or because of that incident. So that's your corporate strategies. Okay, you have corporate objectives, and then based on that, you design your corporate strategies. Now, one of the corporate strategies they also do is corporate business continuity plan, and from these corporate strategies they also derive a corporate action plan, unit business plan, and then unit strategies. So these unit strategies and then this corporate business plan, all of them, they are integrated into this corporate business continuity plan and business unit continuity plan. So they interact with each other consistently and seamlessly. Okay, so this is what is the process. This is why we need the business continuity plan. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm looking at the process of developing a business continuity plan. Now, what are the facets of a BCP? Now, the process or the dimensions of a BCP is first understand the risk. Risk assessment is the first and the foremost thing. Okay, what kind of risks are we open to? What kind of risks we will be exposing ourselves to? How do we manage that? And what are the impact of those risks, risk elements onto the business? That's the next level of facet. Then you look at, okay, now that we have understood the impact, what are the strategies that we can develop? And what are the contingency plans that we develop? And what are the crisis management techniques, tools, processes that we can develop? And how do we recover from this disaster once the disaster incident takes place? So these are the facets of a disaster recovery plan. Now, when you look at this, so we said risk assessment, right? So what are the risks that you need to understand? So you look at this this risk matrix. You look at all kinds of risks that a business faces. It could be a business process risk. It could be political or a social risk. For example, there's a change in legislation. For example, demonetization takes place. So if a demonetization takes place, then what happens? Okay, so how do you bring in that political or social assessment? Okay, then treasury. Do we have sufficient cash to pay our employees for the next 6 months in case there's a demonetization, or in case of a lockdown, or in case of a let's say COVID kind of situation? So that's treasury management. Then personnel. How do we look at ensuring that our people are all competent enough to manage this disruption from home? So that's your personal management. You need to bring in that personal risk. And what happens in case some of our key employees leave? So that's another perspective that we can bring in. And then marketing. So now we have 10 different variants of our products. When there's a lockdown, when there's a disaster, when there's an incident, will I be able to manufacture and supply all these 10 variants, 10 products? So that's your marketing risk. You also need to understand that. And what about the options or the strategies that a competitor could bring down? So how do they manage that? That's another marketing perspective. Then natural disaster contingency planning. Suppose there's an earthquake. Okay, an earthquake could take place anywhere. Okay, maybe on the uh, the, the lines which have this tendency to face this earthquake. That's those are the locations. But fire is something that can take place anywhere. Kolkata hospital fire is a good example. Mumbai fire is a good example. Okay, or the bridge. There's a bridge and the bridge collapses, because of which a couple of employees they die. Then floods. What you saw in Bangalore recently was a good example of organizations facing fire or natural calamity like floods, rains, and then also water seeping in. What we saw in 2016 in Chennai was a good example of a flood. I think just to share one example, we were located just about 50 meters from this river, Kuvam River, which overflowed. And what happened? We were on the first floor. Um, the water started seeping in up to the first floor. So our computers, our servers were all housed on the first floor. Fortunately, they were saved, but our generators, our UPS equipment, all of that was on the ground floor. Everything was kind of submerged in the water. So to bring that up, we had to go through the tendering process, and that took a couple of months. Okay, to get the tenders, to arrange for the funds, and to set it up, all of that, and get permission from the owner. That also took about 20 days to a month. So those disasters, how do we manage? So those are all natural disaster contingency planning process that you need to take care of. And then fraud. Employees steal things. Okay, very common in terms of organizational structure today. Um, Employees steal customer data. Then employees steal financial data. I've written one case where we saw that employees steal money as well. So how do you manage that? That's again a risk. Then legislation. You have a privacy, theft of privacy. Your entire database that you have is kind of hacked. So that's a legislation related issue, because there's a privacy which is imposing a lot of liability on you, and then suddenly the data is stolen. Then you as an organization become responsible for managing this. So that's another risk that you're looking at. Then sales representatives or commission contracts, they kind of commit fraud, or they're not able to recover, money from the suppliers or from the customers. That's another issue. Then information technology, data crash, server crash, okay, access controls, somebody denies, so there's a virus attack. So these are some of the things that come up. And then there is a competitive behavior. So you have launched a product, you invested a lot of resources in and launched a product. Suddenly the competitor launches a competing product. So there's a pricing attack. So these are some of the risks that you need to manage. So the first and the foremost thing is talk to the business heads and then people who are key in those organizations, in those departments, about the impact of these risks on the business. Okay, in case those risks actually materialize, how is it going to be impacting the business organization? So you need to understand that. So first and the foremost thing is you assess the business impact of those activities. It could be economic information, it could be operational information, and based on these two things, you understand the information, then determine the critical elements, and then you finally, based on that, you decide on what are the recovery plans or recovery priorities that you need to decide. And you also need to prepare this kind of a chart where you're talking about what is the type of emergency that we're looking at, what is the probability, what is the human impact, what is the property impact, what's the business impact, and how do we manage this? Do we have internal resources? Do we need to get in external resources? Okay, external resources could be outsourcing this to somebody. External resources could be getting an insurance policy on this. External resources could also be in terms of not managing it internally, but then appointing a consultant to manage this risk. So then, based on all these things, you divide a, you arrive at a, you give a point system, you give them a scores, and then you decide on what is how important or how valuable or how serious a particular emergency is. So here is a quick chart. The vulnerability analysis chart is prepared for this. So this is a chart that I could find online. So I'm sharing this with you. So what happened here was an organization has prepared this chart, hazard identification template, based on, they've divided that into natural disasters, terrorism, cyber attack, and active attackers. Okay, so that's the second category. Third one is pandemic or virals. That's the third one. Climate change, transportation accidents, then infrastructure failures, space weather, hazardous material accidents. So these are the classifications that they have categorized. And they also looked at previous history. So in the area, have there been any such incidents that have taken place? And they've given what is the employee impact, what is the business impact, what is the probability of occurrence, how is it likely to occur, was it light, high probability, low probability, or medium probability, and then where are you preparing this score from? So prepare this. This is the first thing, identifying the risks that could take place. And then once you decide, you have the chart of the vulnerability impact assessment, then you need to decide on, this is a strategic choice. You need to first understand whether the impact is low, or, and under the probability, you decide to look at how you manage these incidents. If it's a low impact but high probability, you just manage it. Manage it could be through contracts, through outsourcing, through insurance policies, and so on. If there is a high probability of high impact, but then a high probability as well, you see if you can reduce your involvement in those activities. On the other hand, if the impact is low and the probability of occurrence of such incidents is also low, then you accept that risk. Okay, this is a loss that you're going to suffer, and then you move forward. But if the incidence is high, or sorry, the impact is high, probability of that incidence is low, then you look at business continuity plan. So these are the matrix that you can build to manage your risk, the choices. Okay. Here is a business risk model of Accenture that has been developed by Accenture. So this Accenture is a consulting company. I'm sure you're all familiar with this. So they look at their risk, whoever they're consulting with. So they create this risk matrix in this fashion. The first one is environmental risk. And in that environment, they just don't look at catastrophe or accidents or even natural disasters. They also look at it from legally. They also look at it shareholder regulatory. then industry, then financial market operations. So though that's your environmental risk. Then process risk is your empowerment risk, financial risk, integrity risk, and operations risk. So this is the second stage. Second kind of risk. So that's environmental risk at a macro level, process risk, which is the internal organization level, and then information for decision makers. So what needs to be communicated to decision makers? So it could be operational risk, then your financial risk, and then strategic risk. So you capture all these risks, prepare a framework, and then escalate it to the management. So senior management, they will take a decision whether to implement a plan or not implement a plan. Now, when you're looking at business continuity plan operations, typically it involves these players. You need to manage people, you need to manage equipment, you need to manage workplace, you need to manage suppliers, you need to manage logistics, and you need to manage finances. Traditionally, the approach taken to manage BCP was identify risks, then determine impact of such risks, and then develop responses, then plan the response. Okay, what should be the response? Then manage the crisis and recover from disaster. So it used to be um, uh, a continuous process. It used to be a linear process, but now it is not linear anymore. So now BCP has taken a modern shape, where they first look at impact analysis. When you look at impact analysis, you start developing a plan, and then you look at the strategy selection, then strategy report, and then you integrate that with your business plan that is being developed, and then you kind of manage to see whether this is working out, this is not working out, whether you need to tweak anything, whether you need to monitor anything, and then you bring in maintenance and testing, and then that all gets into the business continuity plan. Essentially, if you're developing a comprehensive disaster management framework, it needs to have these four elements. One is mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. So mitigation is essentially about reducing risks. Okay, so this is the first element. The second one is preparedness planning. So you need to be prepared. It could be providing training, it could be preparing documentation, it could be preparing the processes. So that's your preparedness planning. And then response planning. So in case these incidents take place, who should be there? Okay, what is a plan that you need to bring out to manage these responses? That's your response planning. And then recovery. So once the incident takes place, how do you look at the recovery planning? Okay, so that's your typically the first two activities. You do it before the disaster. Response planning is during, and then recovery planning is generally after. Okay, so if you have to do this for a hypothetical example of recruitment BCP managers, so here are the things. So you're recruiting a BCP manager, you need to look at plan. So what are the things that is required? Approving, first you need to see who would be the right person, preparing a JD, job description, then getting the approval for the JD, then conducting a salary survey, then getting the right candidate, choosing the right platform where you're going to circulate this advertisement JD, and then getting the right applications. And then once you do this, publish the job openings, receive the candidates' resumes, shortlist them, interview them, and then making the offer, ensuring that they get in. And once they do that, once you do, then you start looking at check. Okay, does manager meets the goals? Make sure that they're on board, they're prepared, they're ready to manage this risk. And then the last one is the act. So once once you've brought them, once there is an incident, ensure that they execute these things properly. So just look at the disaster. So recovery process. So you have a disaster. Reaction could be evacuation and notify business recovery action. So that's a first reaction. And once that is there, because while you're in the premises, there could be a flood. It could be a crash flood. And you have people in your premises. So you need to first evacuate them. And then there could be head offices, there could be corporate office. So notify them. So that's a first stage, first process. And then with the next one is management alert, business recovery plan. Start working on that. Start implementing on that. Then verification and assessment. What is verifying each and every items, people, process, assets, data. Then your facilities, your files, your documentation, your vehicles, everything you first verify, and then assess the damage, and then start looking at what do we need to do, what are the plan of action that we need to take for safeguarding them, protecting them, evacuating them, then managing them. So that's the next process. And then comes your establish command and control center. So this is where I'll be discussing some more about command and control. So how the organizational team should also be facilitated or planned. Then recovery action plan. How do we recover? Then notification process. So you need to notify vendors, service centers, regulatory agencies. Okay, when you talk about service centers, this is in terms of you have your equipment. So now that equipment is underwater. So what do we need to do? What do we need to do? So that's your service centers you need to intimate. So regulatory agencies saying that, boss, we are having this disaster, so give us some leeway. Now, then in addition to that, you also talk to your management team. Okay, so management team, if they have built in a recovery team, you need to activate that. Then administrative recovery team, departmental recovery team, then technical recovery team. So these teams you need to activate, assemble those team members, then implement recovery operations, and then finally perform alternative site operations or begin salvage operations. So this is these are the two things that you need to look at the operation plan. So this is while the incident has taken place. Immediately after that, this is your the first response that you bring in. So apart from that, you're also looking at response planning is done. Okay, so how do you manage your response? Then you start looking at recovery planning. So when you look at recovery planning, it doesn't happen automatically. It needs a lot of preparation. So that preparation needs training. So these are the items that needs to be trained to your employees. Every employee needs to be trained in a disaster. For example, you go to any hotel, any decent hotel, 3-star, 4-star, 5-star, and all of that. Every floor, every nook and corner, there will be a chart. It will say, in case of emergency, go to this place. And even in the lift, they'll say, in case of emergency, please don't use the lift. And in case of fire, these are the people, these are the locations that you need to go. This is the staircase that you need to follow. So these are all there. What are they trying to do? They're essentially training you to follow this particular protocol. So you need to build that protocol. You need to put those posters. You need to put those fire, what do you call that? Fire hydrants. Then you need to also put in this fire extinguishers. All these are incidents that are to be carried out. That's your implementation process. That's your preparation. But also you need to be training the employees, your customers, your vendors, your visitors to ensure that they follow the proper protocol. Now, so this training needs to be provided to these kinds of people. Okay, it could be new employees, all employees, customers, steering committee, then continuity team leaders, and then team members, IT support team, remote workers, emergency response team. So these are the different kinds of people who need to be trained. Okay, all employees also need to be trained on these activities. So the one on the left, okay, these are the activities. First aid, who provides? Everybody has to be provided this first aid process. Then in case there is a technical communication, who's empowered to communicate? So those are the responsibilities that you map, create, and then you communicate to the organization. Now, this preparation exercises, you look at plan the walkthroughs, then facilitate discussions, then single team simulations, multi-team simulations, and then full-scale exercises. So this is the resource requirement and also the time and realism. What is more realistic? The full-scale exercise is more realistic, but this understanding of disaster management, disaster recovery management is to be embedded in everybody. And when you start looking at creating an excellence in the disaster recovery, then you need to get into not only single team simulation, multi-team simulation, but also look at full-scale exercises. Not only that, you need to build in the organizational structure, that continuity organizational structure. So there could be a corporate team, there could be a site team, there could be a site continuity coordinator, there could be recovery team leaders, and then within that you have recovery team members. And then beyond this, there could also be a lot of non-essential personnel. They might not be part of your continuity team, but this recovery team should be able to communicate with this non-essential personnel and tell them what is to be done, how it is to be done, and when it is to be done. So that's your one. And one additional team at a corporate level is very, very essential. This is one. which is in case of a BCP, who should succeed? Okay, in case of president is held hostage, who will be replaced? Who will he be replaced with? Executive vice president. In case executive vice president is also not well, alternative replaced by vice president operations. So if in case of that, who is the alternative replaced? So these are the scenarios that you should have thought about, and you should have created processes to delegate those powers, and under what circumstances you need to look at. Okay, so those are the things that you need to look at in case of disasters. Then we have continuity action and expense log, which is essentially look at what is the event, what is the incident, what happened, what is the amount, who's supposed to be responsible for it, who was the vendor, and who did it, who actually incurred this expense, and is there a insurance reimbursement? If yes, who do we manage? How do we manage? All these things you need to keep account of. So essentially, when you look at BCP implementation process, you need to focus on these three things: education, that is training of every employee of an organization about this what if, essentially about what if. In case of a disaster, what is to be done, how it is to be done, when it is to be done, where it is to be done, who is supposed to be doing it, and all that is to first educate. And this education, before that, you need to anticipate. Okay, so in case of an incident, when is it likely to happen? So anticipation is one. And then once it's all done, communication to all the stakeholders. It could be employees, it could be customers, it could be teams, it could be regulators. Everybody needs to be told. And then this is a testing template. When you're doing a testing phase of your BCP, ensure that this kind of a document is prepared. So you need to first look at what is the objective of this test. Okay, what are the kind of exclusions that are carried out? You look at people, IT, vital records, facilities, and dependencies. So you prepare that sheet accordingly. Then what is the method that was adopted to test this? Why do we need to do this? That's a justification. And what are the things that we need to implement this or make sure that this testing takes place successfully? So we need high-level approval, budget approval, and all of that. And then who has signed off? So it's a business which is signed off, the IT has signed off, the facilities are signed off, and then the management should also have signed off. So make sure that you sign it off in multiple copies and everybody has this documentation. Why? Because in case of an incident or a disaster incident, they need to have this documentation based on which they can take certain actions. So make sure these documents are stored digitally as well as physically, and then they have access to these records. So to summarize, essentially you look at the risk analysis, that's the first one. And then you look at the asset, which is the inventory and asset inventories, which is the equipment, software, everything. And then you look at the risk assessment report, business impact report, whatever we saw earlier, those kind of reports you prepare. And then the procedures for disaster management. So that's your, all these things are provided as inputs to the strategy team. That's your business senior management team. And then you also provide vital materials checklist. So in case of some materials needs to be provided, so all those checklists you provide. And the management will also take inputs from the contracts. Suppose they are outsourcing it, suppose they're bringing consultants, suppose they are taking insurance. So they take inputs from all these things, and then they take a summary from all these things. They'll put a disaster recovery plan or BCP team, and they'll take this requirement report. And based on all these inputs, they'll prepare what is called as a BCP, business continuity plan. Okay, the fundamental objective is to reduce the risk reduction program. Now, the elements of a successful BCP, executive support has to be there, senior management support has to be there. Identify stakeholders, who's going to be responsible for what activities, then create team formation, that is for managing this particular disaster, which is a team responsible for what activities, then keep them engaged, talk to them, let them ensure that they'll keep talking to each other. And then there's shared vision and trust. Everybody should believe in reducing the losses, reducing the disaster, reducing the impact, and also ensuring that the business is operationalized or brought to the full level quickly, and then communicating it. So this is what is the plan, this is who's going to be responsible, this is what is going to be done, this is when it is going to be done. All those things have to be communicated to everyone in the organization. So essentially, understanding the organization, BCP, determining the BCP strategy, developing and implementing BCM response, that is business continuity management response, and then exercising, maintaining, and reviewing this business continuity management program. So this is your BCM life cycle. In a recent survey that was conducted by Gartner, they said 79% of the organizations, they don't even have a BCP. So that's an expected process. Why? Because India has not adopted this business continuity plan process very effectively. I think COVID was a good example. This demonetization is a good example. We don't have a process. So this is expected. Only 15% of the organizations have a full-fledged business continuity plan, which is again an expected process anyways. So not to crib about it, at least now that we are thinking about disaster management, how do we implement this in the next process? It's something that we need to think about. So when we create a business continuity plan, that has to be audited. Why? Whether it is correct, whether it is implementable, whether it will work. And in case of the disaster recovery, see whether what was planned, was it implemented, was it successful, and in case it doesn't work out, how do you make it happen next time around? So that's your BCP audit also is something that can take place. So just to conclude, that's what my thoughts were. Just to conclude, the BCP maturity pyramid is this. So first one is incident management. So first look at how do I manage the incident in the first place whenever the incident takes place. Then comes the ICT disaster recovery planning. So from there, that's a basic one. From there comes your recovery planning. Next comes your contingency planning, product recall, hostage, kidnap, etc. So that's your next level of plan. Then business continuity management is the next. That's your pyramid. Is as you grow, as you evolve as an organization, you need to bring in business continuity management, and then beyond that is your operational risk management and incident management. That's your next stage. And then the topmost priority is your reputation management and brand protection. So you're doing all these things as part of a disaster recovery to ensure that your organization's reputation and your brand is protected. So this is what I had about my topic, which is which is on business continuity plan from an organizational perspective and how it is to be implemented. What are the things that you need to manage? All that. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Sir, good evening, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm from Mysore National Institute of Engineering.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, I want to know, like you told, in big organization, all this will be managed.
Correct.
Is there any separate agencies which takes care of providing a customer services to like it can be a Dell company or an HP company, any other like as a customer service, will they provide this management skill, or the company itself will have a department for managing all this?
Ma'am, most of the IT and IT enabled services companies are providing this as a consulting services now. Now, if you're buying all your equipments from, let's say you mentioned Dell and HP. So what they do is, as part of your purchase program itself, they provide you with an extended warranty. So they provide for data recovery, data management, data backup, and also they'll ensure that this is implemented in your organization in case of a disaster. So that's one part. But sometimes, let me take an example. This might be an extreme example, but it makes sense. Let's say you are a financial institution and all your customers, let's say you're a bank, and all your customer data is with you. Now, bank, being a bank, you're dealing with money. Now, RBI, through its regulatory framework, it has said that you are not supposed to be outsourcing this data to somebody else. Now, in case of such kind of a scenario, it is pertinent that the responsibility is on you to manage that risk rather than outsourcing to somebody. I'm not saying there are no outsourced services available. There are definitely there. Okay, it just needs that what kind of a data you're managing, what kind of activities you're managing, and how you want to manage it. That's something you need to decide. Hope that clarifies, Annapurna ma'am.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening, sir. This is Malayapan.
Yes,
Good
Malay.
evening, sir. Yeah. Sir, do you think which industry or sector is more vulnerable to this all kind of disaster things? And another question is, what about Indian Railways? They are managing all these kinds of disaster management, very well, according to you.
Sir, Indian Railway as an organization has been there for almost 100 plus years now. So just give me 1 minute. Yes. So it's been there for a very long time, almost about 100 years now. And their response team, especially disaster recovery and business continuity plan, is one of the robust ones. Why? Because I don't know, I've not worked for the Indian Railways, but my understanding is whenever there's an accident, they'll always immediately say, okay, this is the team who's going to be responsible for communication. This is the team which is going to be responsible for talking to regulators. This is the team which is going to be responsible for um, finding out an alternative route. This is a team which is going to be responsible for providing relief measures to the ones who are victims. So these are the teams that are very, very successfully implemented by railways. So from that perspective, I'm sure this is a good example of a disaster management team. That's one. And yeah, whenever we see floods in Chennai or floods in Mumbai, the trains are stopped immediately, but the message is communicated to all the passengers who are traveling by the train that no, the trains have stopped. You please get out of this train and to start making alternative arrangements. So to that extent, the processes have been streamlined. That's one. Which industry is more, or which sector is more prone, given the current dependency on ICT, that is information and communication technologies, or the more organizations depend on the data? Almost all those data are now become vulnerable. For example, the Amazon server could crash. We recently saw the Microsoft operating system crashed. Okay, now because of that, a lot of companies, all over the world, a lot of industries were not able to cope up with. Suppose now most of the companies are now using either the data servers of Amazon or Azure, or maybe even some other platform. Now, if the server of those companies crash, all the companies which are dependent on that are going to be affected by that. Well, I hope I'm making sense.
Yes, sir. Good. Another one is regarding that collateral damage right of things like Lehman Brothers has went into bankruptcy. It takes a lot of side effects from that and a lot of financial injury. These kind of things, how a business can think over as a long term measures or something like that.
Okay, let me give you this example. Now, let's say you let me not make up let me not think of a very complicated example. Let me give you what happened during our Chennai floods way back in 2016. I told you we had this office in Chennai. We were on the first floor. A lot of things were on the ground floor, including the server backup, your generator, your I don't know what. Vehicles were parked there. There are record keeping rooms are all on the ground floor. All these things were there, and the other company that was there on the ground floor, which was completely demolished, was Fidelity Investments. Now, what did Fidelity do after that? For the next 15-20 days, nobody could venture into that because it was all submerged in the water. So after the recovery, after we could enter into the premises, the first thing that we saw was, okay, these computers are gone. You cannot do anything. So that becomes a collateral damage. So there's a disaster. What we're allowing it to be not salvageable, that becomes a collateral damage. Now, collateral damage, this is a good example of an equipment become a collateral damage, but likewise, the suppliers can become a collateral damage, the customers can become a collateral damage, certain shareholders can also become a collateral damage. It all depends on what kind of a strategy you are following as a company, what kind of relationship you want to maintain with those stakeholders. It's dependent on a lot of those factors. I hope I'm making sense what happened.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Good evening,
Hi,
sir.
sir. Shweta, go ahead.
Yes. Good evening, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Shweta, ma'am.
I'm Shweta. Sir, my question is, how can shareholders recover from disasters like COVID-19 amidst market fluctuations, and how does a BCP contribute to building resilience?
See, the primary objective of BCP is to build resilience. So one of my first company that I worked for immediately after my graduation was this company called Thomson Reuters. So I was not a member of the BCP because I was just a fresh graduate, but I've seen my team members and my senior team members, my team leader and my senior team members, they were part of this this BCP team. Now, essentially, what were they trying to do? They were trying to say, in case there is a lockdown, in case there is a disaster, the operation should not get affected even for one day. Okay, maybe we'll take about half a day to recover, but beyond that one day, the day of the incident, the business should not get affected. So that's where the resilience comes in. Okay, now typically the BCP is built around ensuring that there is resilience in terms of operations, in terms of activities, in terms of the financials, in terms of people, in terms of the facilities, assets. Everything is kind of resilient to ensure that there is no loss to the organization, or reducing the loss to the organization is the objective of BCP. Now, having said that, shareholders invariably are prone to disasters. Let's understand that. Not because the business suffers a loss. No, it's not because of that. If there's a good BCP process implemented, the shareholders will not suffer losses because of the business operations. But why are they suffering losses? Because of the incident. There is a reflection of this incident of the stock market, and that stock market causes that fluctuation, which might lead to shareholders' losses. But if the shareholders are confident in the management team that has been implemented, that they've installed, and if the processes that this team has implemented is also robust, then if they wait for a minimum team, I told you, no, there is a recovery time and there's a normalization team. The time it takes to come back to the normal or optimal operations level. If they wait till that time, whatever losses that they've suffered because of the fluctuation in the share price, they should be back to normal. No organization will stay in that trough for a long time, especially given a disastrous situation. I hope that clarifies it, Shweta ma'am.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Hi, sir. Hi, Professor Nityanandan, sir. I hope you remember me. I have already participated in your workshop in NIIT. Since I wanted to thank your moment to sincerely thanking you for the insight that you have given on the workshop that happened in NIIT, and hence I'm looking forward to the piece of your information or advice on what would be the critical step that conducting business impact analysis in BCP for disaster scenario, number one, and what kind of a role employee plays in a successful BCP and how they can be trained.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Premanand, for remembering me about this.
I hold that workshop with a lot of questions I do ask. You are very simple hands. You have given so much insight on that. So I would like to take up this question, the role of the employee. That's very important. I felt.
So, coming back to the employees, now, employees. I think you asked two questions. The first one was I forgot. The second one is employees. What is the first question? If I can repeat, sir.
Advice on critical step for conducting the business impact analysis.
Yeah. Now I get it. So you saw this, right? There was a questionnaire. There was a triangular questionnaire that I put about. So that framework tells you, because the critical pathway to understand the risk impact is not the senior management. Senior management is just looking at this, the organization from a macro perspective. The guys who will be looking at the process day in, day out, the executives or the floor level, the staff members, they'll be the ones who will know, okay, in case there's electricity fluctuation, then this machine will collapse, or this machine will blast. So they are the ones who will know the impact. So when somebody is trying to create this critical path or critical analysis or critical impact, even for that, they should first talk to the people who are going to be implementing these ideas, these plans at the floor level. And once you get their inputs, then you start collecting at a macro level. Okay, boss, this is what could be, this is what he says. So there must be some truth in it. So get it vetted by his supervisor or his team leader. And then you, once he confirms this, then you go ahead and integrate that into your plan. Okay, then you can even ascertain who is which path is the most critical one, or which is the most critical asset to be protected, which is the most critical factor to be considered in this. So all these things play a crucial role. Every employee plays a crucial role. Why? Because they are the ones who are handling a particular situation, particular asset, particular process, and even particular people. So they will know how will these aspects behave in a particular scenario. So once you are able to clarify that, once you are able to get that input through those questionnaires, through those discussions, and then you bring it into a macro level perspective and say, okay, is it worth investing? Is it worth salvaging? Or is it okay if we allow it to become a collateral damage? So those kind of things the management has to think about, and then they can implement this process. Hope that clarifies, Professor Prema.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
I cannot say no on this because your explanation is always great. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much.
Hello, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, good evening, sir. My name is FX Daisy Mehta. So, my question is when developing a business continuity plan, how can the organization prioritize the critical business functions, such as revenue generating, or either it could be maintaining the relationship with customers?
Okay, so this is a typical question that comes up, and the reason is very simple. What is the priority for the management? That determines what becomes a critical part. Okay, if they say if the company feels that employees are not important for me, customers are, then that becomes a critical part, and they'll take every possible measure to protect their customers. On the other hand, if they feel that no, customers are important for me, but if my employees are not taken care well today, then my customers will be impacted sometime in future. If they have this maturity to think on those lines, then they will first console the customers first, but then they'll always give a lot of importance, a lot of criticality to managing the customers, sorry, the employees. So it depends on what the management prioritizes as part of its activities. I hope that clarifies, ma'am.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
I request all the participants to turn on the camera so that we can click a picture with Dr. Nityananda. May I request everyone to please turn on your cameras? Annapurna ma'am, Shweta, Daisy, Premanand sir. Ratnavali ma'am. Webinar team, can you please click a picture? Webinar team, can you please click a picture? Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for the
Thank you very much.
engaging and informative session. We are very sorry we had to bother you during your ill health.
And
And
that's
despite that, you were very kind to accommodate. So your insights has provided us with a comprehensive understanding of how we can better mitigate and respond to crisis. And your lecture was filled with beautiful examples and very recent examples which we were able to relate to. So thanks a lot, sir, and praying God to bless you with good health. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
I'm leaving the call, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. We'll take a 10 minutes break and join by 7:25. Dr. Pratibha, senior scientist, will join.